Honourable Chair, and while you're behind me, I am delighted to see you physically present, and I'm delighted to see so many in this room. Before I start my formal speech, can I say that I have been given permission to leave my mask off during the presentation so that I think everyone is safe. But just in case there were some concerns, I have asked for and been granted permission. So let me start by saying, for many of you, and indeed for myself, it's very unusual to be present in Brussels on Friday. You know, when I'm normally in my constituency on these days, I meet businesses, fishermen, farmers, other groups and schools. And I suppose what I try to do is make our European Union more tangible and accessible. But I always bring their concerns back here to the Parliament. Some of you will know that I've served 16 years in this House, and now, subject to your approval, I look towards a new challenge. Since my nomination, I've engaged with this committee, and I want to thank you for sharing your concerns and your expectations. Our work as members of this Parliament is never easy, as we strive to reach consensus, but mutual respect and listening are key. In this House, I've covered many different policy areas, from unfair trading practices in the food supply chain to reforming legislation on medical devices, Brexit, and indeed the future of Europe. But in my very first mandate, one of the big issues I dealt with was a financial one. From 2006 to 2007, I chaired a special parliamentary committee of inquiry into the crisis at the Equitable Life Assurance Society. I can still recall distressed policyholders from many member states making contact with me. That experience frames my approach to financial issues, putting people front and centre. My vision for financial services centres on ensuring the sector's strength and stability for its own sake, but also so it can deliver for society and indeed now for sustainability and our environment. My most recent legislative work is on climate law, which will be voted in plenary next week. If confirmed, I will contribute with a renewed sustainable finance strategy. This will be fundamental for the Union and Member States to achieve ambitious climate targets. I'm honoured to have been put forward by Ireland as Commissioner-designate and by President von der Leyen to the Financial Services, Financial Stability and Capital Markets portfolio. If confirmed, I will be joining a gender-balanced college of commissioners, and I look forward to continuing the work of Valdis, working collectively with the College, supporting College positions in the interests of the Union and all European citizens. So people are at the heart of my vision to fulfil the tasks in my mission letter. A banking union that provides stability for households and SMEs, a capital markets union at the service of all, a financial system that serves society holistically and takes seriously its responsibility to address climate and environmental challenges. A new digital finance strategy that stimulates innovation while being alert to the risks. A fair financial system with zero tolerance for money laundering. A strong financial sector that supports Europe's place in an ever uncertain world. And above all else, a financial system that underpins a more inclusive society. Almost a year ago to the day, at his hearing, Executive Vice President Dombrovskis set out his agenda for financial services. It will be my responsibility, if you approve my nomination, to continue this agenda. However, the context has changed fundamentally. 1 million people have died of COVID-19. Our world has gone from strong growth and employment to severe disruption to our way of life and our economy. Many have lost their jobs, in particular young people. The crisis we face is challenging, and because we do not know the path of the virus, the road ahead is uncertain. And as you've heard this morning, the virus doesn't discriminate. It can attack young and old, the powerful and the weak. And that's why we need to have a very united stand, both in terms of how we address the health issue, but also in terms of how we deal with the economic consequences. I think it's important to say that our member states reacted swiftly to protect public health and support our economy and society through wage subsidies and business support measures. EU leaders reached a landmark political agreement on the Next Generation EU fund of €750 billion, signalling unprecedented EU support for the recovery and a holistic demonstration of solidarity. As this committee knows, on the financial services side, central banks and supervisors took big steps to allow the financial sector to stabilise the economy. The Commission proposed a banking package to enable banks to keep lending, which you agreed to in record time. The Capital Markets Recovery Package, now on the table, will make it easier for capital markets to support European businesses. But we know that some companies will not recover and that financial institutions will face an increase in non-performing loans, which we must prepare for. This will receive my highest attention if you choose to confirm me. But let's be very clear, this is not 2008. Banks were part of the problem then. They are now part of the solution, with stronger levels of capital and liquidity. And we can see the positive impact of the regulatory framework implemented after the global financial crisis. The work of the EU institutions, not least this committee, was and is key in creating a more stable financial system. To aid our recovery while supporting the green transition and the digital transformation of the EU economy, our financial system must remain strong so that it can be at the heart of rebuilding our society and our economy. So one of my key priorities will be to inject fresh energy into completing banking union. This is vital for financial stability, for the resilience of the euro area, and to strengthen the international role of the euro. Agreement on the common backstop to the Single Resolution Fund and a European Deposit Insurance Scheme is essential. I will work with this committee and member states to find a way forward. You know very well how difficult it is to make progress on banking union, but allowing this stalemate to continue leaves us vulnerable in times of crisis. In this House, I've never shied away from the most difficult of challenges, and I will not shy away from building consensus on banking union. The stability of banks depends also on global cooperation. I will continue the implementation of Basel III standards, taking account of EU specificities and proportionality. Your support and cooperation will be essential. Hand in hand with the banking union, building a capital markets union would strengthen our single market, allowing money to flow more easily across the European Union. It would allow for greater diversity in funding for businesses, in particular SMEs and startups, wherever they are located, and provide more opportunities for savers and investors. We do need to reduce barriers to investment and savings and tackle obstacles that discourage cross-border activity to build a capital markets union that serves everyone. I fully endorse the recently launched Capital Markets Union Action Plan, which outlines a very clear way forward. Among the 16 actions, some will be easier to deliver than others. I hope we can make quick progress on the SME IPO fund, but we will also need to tackle some very difficult issues. European capital markets are still too fragmented along national lines. To break down barriers, we will also need to look at insolvency proceedings, withholding tax procedures and supervision. The Capital Markets Union is a long-term project and will require continuing commitment and support. I know this committee is strongly supportive, and I welcome your own initiative report. The future will be green and digital, and this will require fundamental changes across our societies. This Parliament has called it right. We are in a climate emergency. The COVID-19 crisis cannot be used as an excuse to delay addressing the challenges of climate change, environmental degradation and biodiversity loss. Our goal is for the European Union to be climate neutral by 2050. Public financing will not be enough to reach our target. We need more private investment. Finance and capital must flow towards investments that foster a green recovery, promote a more circular economy, and have sustainability at their very core, recognising that sustainability is not only green, but social too. The taxonomy regulation is a key step in clarifying for investors and companies what economic activities are green. With the support of this committee, I will prioritise a new action plan on sustainable finance, accelerate work on an EU green bond standard, eco-labels, green sustainable investments, and improve disclosure of climate and environmental data by companies, helping investors and industry identify sustainable projects. I fully support Commission President von der Leyen's ambition that 30% of the next generation EU fund of €750 billion will be raised through green bonds. I don't underestimate the challenge, But I am determined to see us through. We don't have any other choice. Our lives have been very restricted by COVID-19. We can see it this morning in our room. And now we know more than ever the benefits of technology and innovation. There are even more fintech providers now, and digital finance transactions have increased, more online shopping and contactless payments. The new digital finance package adopted last week is both necessary and timely. The pace of digital innovation is accelerating, and with it come both opportunities and risks. The Commission's retail payments strategy sets out a vision for payments across the European Union, allowing consumers to pay more easily cross-border and beyond the European Union. Europe has fallen behind, and there is no time to waste. We need to tackle fragmentation in the single market for digital financial services and strive for a European financial data space to promote innovation. The principle of same risk, same activity, same regulation must be at the heart of our regulatory approach, and we need strong safeguards to mitigate against cyber attacks and other risks. We are all aware of the emerging market in crypto assets. We need a common EU framework to give legal clarity and address risks while exploiting opportunity. In this area, like in the area of capital markets, we need strong supervision. The Wirecard scandal is a shocking tale of fraud, inadequate audits and failure of supervision. We need to take a long, hard look at what went wrong there and learn all the lessons. It took the work of investigative journalism over many years to break this story, a saga with a black hole of 1.9 billion. I think it's worth letting that sink in. It was such an enormous, and is such an enormous issue. You know, last week again, we relied on investigative journalism to expose weaknesses in our frameworks. Money laundering is part of a criminal chain of activity that wreaks havoc on our society. Human trafficking, child pornography, drugs, counterfeit goods and terrorism. We have to be tougher to secure the integrity of our financial system, to stop money laundering. So I welcome the new anti-money laundering action plan adopted in May, and will continue to work through a legislative package next year, taking into account this Parliament's resolution in July. We need a single EU rulebook, one that's not overseen just by national supervisors, but by a very strong, independent EU anti-money laundering supervisor. And we need enhanced cooperation between financial intelligence units. If I get your support, I will be joining a geopolitical commission, working to strengthen the EU internally and externally. Never before have the fragilities of the world we took for granted been so exposed as in this time of the pandemic. The need for cooperation has never been stronger. Equally, the need to protect and safeguard our values in a world full of risks has never been clearer. We stand on the side of our fundamental values of democracy, human rights and cooperation. Protecting and projecting the values on which our union is founded means standing up to those who seek to undermine them. A credible and responsive sanctions framework is key for an effective foreign policy. In parallel, I will look at ways to defend ourselves from unwarranted extraterritorial effects on our interests of sanctions adopted by others, and will work on our ability to impose sanctions. To be open to the world, we also need to be strong and secure at home. At a time when global institutions are struggling and large powers are turning inwards, the European Union must act firmly to protect our interests and the work towards restoring multilateralism, including in the global financial dimension. The United Kingdom has left the European Union, and we are coming towards the end of the transition period. I fully support Michel Barnier's work towards a new relationship in the interests of both the European Union and the United Kingdom. We must be ready to deal with the consequences in the financial sector that flow from the United Kingdom becoming a third country. Under all circumstances, deal or no deal, the trade and financial services between the United Kingdom and the European Union will be different and less fluid as of the 1st of January next year. All EU financial firms and stakeholders need to prepare for this. Many already have, and others need to do so urgently. We have taken decisions in the interests of EU financial stability for the short term, notably on CCPs. We need to avoid being overly dependent on a third country for key financial services. And this is not closing ourselves off to the outside world. Indeed, I want to make sure that we have a strong European financial system and that the services that underpin our financial stability are under our rules and our supervision. Dear colleagues, we have made significant progress following the crisis of 2008. I want a resilient European financial system that underpins social inclusion and is open for all. COVID-19 has shown that neglecting investment in public health comes at a high price, that freedoms are not always guaranteed, and that wealth creation is not an end in and of itself, but rather the key to building more resilient and inclusive societies. As we chart a new direction that's green, digital and more sustainable and inclusive, the financial sector must play its full part, ensuring capital for the right investments, embracing environmental and social responsibility, not as nice to have, but as fundamental. We have no time to lose. And I, for one, have never allowed a moment to be wasted in my 16 years in this House. This Parliament means a great deal to me, and should I meet with your approval, you can count on my full cooperation with you. Thank you, and I look forward to our debate.